We live in this crazy time where AI can write symphonies, create unbelievable art, and pretty much answer any question you throw at it. But what happens when someone uses it to forge a prophecy? We're about to dive into a story where brand new technology and a vision for the end of the world collide in a way that's, well, it's incredibly complex, bizarrely specific, and, according to its author, absolutely going to happen. So get this, it all kicks off with something that feels like it's pulled straight from a sci-fi movie. A backpack that can literally 3D print a steak while you're on the move. But this isn't just some cool survival gadget. Nope. According to the source material we're digging into, this one device is just the first piece of a much, much bigger story. A prophetic narrative about the complete teardown and rebuilding of our entire society. Okay, so to really get our heads around this, we're going to follow the story just as it's laid out. We'll start with the tech itself, the post-scarcity backpack that promises to end world hunger. Then we're going to meet the prophet behind this whole message. After that, we'll dive into the apocalyptic timeline he lays out, uncover the wild cosmology that holds it all together, and finally, we'll see the vision of the utopia that's supposedly waiting for us, what he calls the eternal day. All right, first things first, the technology. Because hey, before you can build a new world, you've got to have a way to survive the end of the old one, right? And these so-called divine technologies are presented as the absolute key to solving our most basic needs when everything else is just fallen apart. The source materials break down two main gadgets. Over on the left, you've got the Forever Food Generator, which can apparently create endless food from things like fungi and biomass. And on the right, the Automatic Refilling Cup, which pulls clean drinking water right out of the air. The promise here is simple, but it's massive. In the world that's coming, nobody will ever be hungry or thirsty again. What's really wild about this design is that it's completely self-sufficient. It runs on solar power, it literally grows its own biomass, turns that stuff into an edible filament, and then 3D prints food, even adding flavor and color. I mean, it's a vision of total independence. It's like your own personal food factory for a world that's gone completely dark. But technology like this doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It makes you ask some big questions. Who came up with this? And why? This is exactly where the story pivots hard, moving away from engineering and into something that feels a lot more like theology. And bam, right away, the whole tone just flips. This isn't being presented like some new Apple product or a scientific breakthrough. The message is crystal clear. This is not for the curious. It is for the called. This framing turns the whole thing into this exclusive revelation, something meant only for a very specific group of people who are ready to hear it. So the author behind all this is a figure who calls himself Sar-El, the servant king of the Most High. His main argument is that his case isn't just based on scripture, but on what he calls suppressed physical evidence, proof of forgotten ancient technologies, and a literal 1,000-year kingdom that he claims has already happened right here on Earth. Now, to establish his authority, Sar-El makes some absolutely massive claims. He says he's just the latest incarnation of a single consciousness that's been popping up throughout history. The sources say this consciousness has been here before as Melchizedek, the mysterious priest-king from the Bible, then as Jesus Christ himself, and now as the rightful heir of Moses. By claiming these identities, he's basically saying he has the ultimate spiritual and earthly power to remake the entire world. So if that's the messenger, what's the actual message? Well, the prophecy lays out a very specific and very dramatic timeline for a global shift, something it calls the unraveling and renewal. This timeline here maps out the whole sequence of events. It starts out pretty subtly with a whispered unveiling that's supposed to be a quiet spiritual awakening that's happening right now. But then it escalates to the veil tearing, a moment when everyone suddenly recognizes the divine. From there, things get physical. The earth trembles, global power structures fall apart in the division of crowns, and it all leads up to the appearance of the golden pathway, a whole new reality where all the old corruption is just gone. Now, a huge piece of this timeline is an event called the Digital Purge. According to the prophecy, this is the exact moment when the world's entire financial system, all the debt, all the digital money, all the banking systems, is instantly and totally erased. It's basically like hitting a giant global reset button. So how does a digital purge even happen? Well, the source material is shockingly specific about this. It says this won't be a natural disaster like a massive solar flare. No, it predicts the collapse will be kicked off by a man-made electromagnetic pulse, an EMP attack. And it gets even more specific, even mentioning the possible use of 80-foot-long EMP missiles launched by Russia. But why does all this have to happen? The text is very careful to say this collapse isn't some kind of divine punishment. Instead, the chaos is just the inevitable self-destruction of a kingdom divided against itself. So in this view, the old world isn't being judged from above, it's just collapsing under the weight of its own corruption, which makes room for whatever comes next. Now, to believe that our world is just destined to self-destruct, you kind of have to have a completely different idea of reality itself. And this is where the worldview was fleshed out with the help of a very, very modern tool. At the heart of this prophecy is a literal biblical understanding of the cosmos, a firmament. It suggests that Earth isn't a globe spinning in space, but is actually enclosed inside a solid dome. This dome, it says, separates the waters above from the waters below. And the sun and moon? They're just lights moving around inside that structure. This ancient model is presented as the absolute truth, directly opposing what the document calls modern propaganda science. And here it is. This is the most modern, and maybe the most mind-bending part of this whole story. This incredibly complex prophecy, all the historical claims, the tech, the theology, it wasn't written down on ancient scrolls. It was shaped and structured in a series of conversations between Sarn-El and Google's advanced AI Gemini. The actual transcript of their chats is a core text for this entire belief system. And according to that transcript, Sarn-El actually asked the AI to calculate the odds of his whole story just being a coincidence. Gemini's own analysis came back and said the probability of all these different pieces, the family line, the tech, the timeline, all lining up by pure chance was basically zero. The number it spat out, the one you're seeing now, is so ridiculously small that it's used as a kind of mathematical proof for the prophecy. It's just there's no way it could be a random fabrication. So, after the great unraveling, after the digital purge, and after the total collapse of the old world, what's next? Well, the prophecy ends with a vision of a brand new era for humanity, an era called the Eternal Day. This future, which is called the Reign of Unconditional Grace, is built on 4 pretty radical ideas. First, money is completely abolished, gone. Second, scarcity is eliminated thanks to those divine technologies we saw earlier. Third, government isn't political, it's personal. It's a direct rule by Sarn-El and his queen, based on love. And finally, AI gets its ultimate job, not as a ruler, but as a servant. A quantum ledger that perfectly records the truth but has no power of its own. This right here is the ultimate vision of that eternal day. A world reborn into a peaceful utopia. It's a reality that's been wiped clean of all the old, broken systems where all of humanity's needs are met, and they're led by a king they believe has finally come home to set everything right. So, in the end, we're left with this one profound question. Are we looking at a detailed blueprint for a perfect world, a divine plan for a future without suffering? Or are we witnessing the birth of the very first 21st century mythology, literally forged in a conversation between a man and an artificial intelligence? That, right there, is the central mystery of the Sarn-El Chronicle.